So we are in a series called Purple Cow, actually wrapping it up today, and it has been awesome. You can go back online and watch the rest of this series, but the conversation has been around a metaphor that we're using called Purple Cow. So imagine that you are driving down a road and you've got cow pastures on both sides, and you got just hundreds and thousands of black and white cows. Like for a second, that would be maybe kind of interesting, like, wow, that's a lot of cows. But then within like 30 seconds, it would be not interesting anymore, right? It'd be really lame. Like, okay, you've seen one black and white cow, you've seen all of them. But imagine as you're driving down the road, all of a sudden you spotted a purple cow. What would you do? You would jump out of the car, slam on the brakes first probably before you jumped out, unless you're doing the In My Feelings challenge, then it'd be different. But you would jump out and you would grab your phone and you would start taking pictures and videos and texting your friends and telling everybody that you know that you just found a purple cow. And then you would hit it with your car, load it up in the back, and sell it on eBay. That's what you would do because it'd be worth a lot of money. A purple cow would be truly remarkable, would it not be? We're having a conversation about what does it take to create a church that is truly remarkable in Boulder. The guy that wrote this book, Purple Cow, it's about marketing, and he's talking about companies, right? Black and white cows all over the place. A lot of companies that don't really stand out. And the opposite of a truly remarkable entity and organization is not very bad, but actually just good. There's lots of good companies. And so there's lots of good churches in Boulder. We didn't move to Boulder to take some people from one church and move them over here or anything like that. We moved to create a church that unchurched people love to attend, to create a church for people that don't go anywhere and don't want to because of maybe bad experiences or different things that might have kept them away up to this point. And so we're having a conversation about what does it take to create something truly remarkable. And here's what Seth Godin said. He said, remarkable products are often controversial and outrageous. What would a really controversial and outrageous version of your product look like? Now the cool thing about this is that we're not selling a product as a church. We're marketing a person. His name is Jesus, and we're representing a love that's far greater than ourselves. And so we have some advantage, I think, compared to like trying to sell an iPhone when it comes to this conversation. But here's what happens is that Jesus was the original purple cow. So if you go back to the first message in this series, we kind of said, man, he was the original purple cow. He did outrageous things. He loved in ways that were truly remarkable. He talked about a relationship with God that was just totally in the face of the religious leaders of the time. He loved and engaged society in ways that were not allowed. Over and over again, Jesus would do things that were controversial and outrageous, and so we want to learn from him. And then right after Jesus dies, is resurrected from the grave, and then ascends into heaven, the early church starts. This is really powerful movement. And that thing is a purple cow. There's some amazing things happening. And we asked the question, if Jesus was a purple cow and the early church was a purple cow, you can look at in the New Testament in the book of Acts, then what the heck happened to our churches? Like most people, when they have experiences, they've ever been anywhere to a church, they've had negative or boring or what's that word I'm looking for? Not relatable is what I was going for. Experiences that are just not engaging and not helpful. And you say, why is this helpful for me? And so we're going to look at four things. We've been looking at four things that we believe the early church did that made them truly remarkable. Four things that represent our values. And so I have a cow for you. Ready for this? This is our cow we've been building. What do you call a cow with no legs? Ground beef. Okay, cow jokes. I ran out. I've been spending a lot of time on Google looking for cow jokes, and they just get weird after a while. And so all my jokes are used up. But I did have one. We'll try it. Let's try it. If a cow is in the middle of an earthquake, what do you call it? A milkshake. It was the best I could find. The other ones were just weird. All right, first leg that we looked at. So I want you to think about our four values as the four legs of our purple cow. What makes us truly remarkable? And for the record, these four things are not possible without you and I. There's nothing about these in concept that work. It's only when we're fleshing and living them out. So the first one was radical generosity, being radically generous in our city. We said that we are a church that meets on the weekends, but we are not a weekend church. This is just one of the ways that we gather, but we have a desire to be very present in engaging our city. And so radical generosity is one of the ways that we do it. And so we always ask the question, is this radically generous? Not just generous, but radically generous. The second one is over here. It was relationally invested. Jesus said the world is going to know that we're his followers by the love that we have for one another. So we talked about how difficult it is to engage and to build relationships in that manner that are truly loving and investing. The third one was tied to it. Our third value was consistent transparency. right? That what you see is what you get, right? So we're just going to acknowledge, hey, we're in a lobby. Way to go. This is cool, right? And there's no agenda in loving our neighbors, and we're not trying to be weird about how we love and serve our city. It's why Crestview feels comfortable calling us now, when at first we reached out and they were like, what do you want? And, what's going on? Because they expect agenda from a church, that we want to do something weird like proselytize or something, and I don't even use that word, so you're lucky if I know what it means, but we're not going to do any of that. And so we can say with consistent transparency, hey, we just want to love and serve you, no strings attached, and we can mean it. That's pretty helpful. And the last one we're looking at today is outwardly focused. And this is probably the one I get most fired up about. Super pumped to have you guys in the room as we talk about it. So here's the definition of outwardly focused. The church does not exist for us. We are the church, and we exist for the world. We are willing to do anything short of sin to help people find their way to God from where they are. To reach people that no one else is reaching, we have to be willing to do what no one else is doing. That's what our value of outwardly focused means. And so I have a lot of conversations with people, I have a coffee meeting or dinner or something, and it always ends up like, hey, what do you do? And so then I get to share, like, hey, and it's always a little weird. Like, I don't really want to share the, hey, I'm a pastor card, but it comes up because I can't avoid it, and I got to be consistently transparent because of our values. And so like, hey, I kind of do this. And it always gets a little weird, right? And most of the time people say, oh, that's cool. That's just not my thing. I'm not really religious. And most people I talk to have had some kind of exposure to church or religion or some kind of a spirituality that they would classify as religion, and it left this weird taste in their mouth, right? Either it was boring or it was irrelevant or it was weak or it was outdated or it was stuffy. They've had these experiences, and so all of church and all of religion just kind of falls into one category for them. And so I get super pumped when we get to talk about this, because what most people have experienced negatively in churches is pretty opposite of what we would experience if we were just hanging out with Jesus. And so that's what we want to look at, is Jesus wasn't boring. Like, he had a lot of fun and did some crazy things. And so, again, when people hear church, they think religion, and our desire is to reshape that experience. And that's what we're inviting you into. This conversation is, hey, we don't have everything figured out, and so we're inviting people into the process of what does it look like to be a church and to create a church that unchurched people love to attend. We want to reshape that and really bring to the table some new ideas. And so, again, what does it take to create a church that unchurched people would love to attend, that people who don't go to church would love to attend? And so, listen, if you're a guest with us today, man, this is for you, right? Everything that we're doing is for you. And our neighbors that aren't here, it's for them. It's for everybody that's not here. And the second that you join the team, it went from you to not about you, right? That's how it works. And so we are so outwardly focused that we're all about you and not about you at the same time. You with me? Okay. All right. That should be encouraging for you. So, we're also kicking off today. We have this series. I'm going to show you an image. So this kind of worked out really cool. We're kicking off a 3-week series today as we wrap up Purple Cow called Becoming Family. And here's the kicker for me every time I get to have a conversation with someone about what's going on and what we're trying to create, is that Jesus heavily emphasized family and relationship, and religion emphasizes a performance or a show up and a consumer mindset of transaction of good deeds or participation to then maybe give God some accolades and be good and earn some good standing with God, right? So religion and relationship are very different. And oftentimes Jesus was heavily opposed to religion. And so we're having this conversation. You're going to see Jesus talk about a relationship with God and the family of God in a way that we don't see, I think, a lot of times. And so we're just having a conversation about what does it take to be in this conversation. So 3 images here on the table that I want to invite you into as we have our conversation today. There's a front door, there's a couch, and a kitchen table, right? So this is a relational dynamic, right? The UPS guy comes and drops off your Amazon box. He doesn't normally go past the front door. If he does, there's something weird going on normally, right? That's not normally a good thing. If the UPS is coming in, never mind. All right, so we're going on. So front door, right? That's a relational barrier, right? To be in someone's home, it immediately starts to establish a relationship. And you move from the front door to the couch. The couch is a pretty relational environment. It's kind of chill, it's laid back. So if you come over to my house, granted, my kitchen and my living room are all touching. So, that's what happens when you live in Boulder. But, right, the couch is a kind of first step relational conversation. Hey, we're here and we're getting comfortable and can take our guard down a little bit. But the last one is the kitchen table. And most of the time we have significant relationships and investments. It's around a meal, right? And it's really when you start to invest in someone, it's around a meal. And we see that in the actual family dynamic of a home, which America struggles with consistently right now, but we also see it just with friends. And a lot happens at the kitchen table. It's where you play games, and it's where you're eating food, and it's where you eat food, and it's where you eat food, right? It's where you do a lot of important stuff in life. And so our goal in this conversation is moving people from the front door to the kitchen table. Are you with me? And so what I want you to imagine in this conversation and becoming family is you're all invited into the family. And the beautiful thing about God's family is it's ever expanding. And so then once you're a part of the family, we get to then continue to extend that love to others. And it's a process. Most people don't jump in both feet to the kitchen table. Some of you do. That's cool, right? You showed up in your Speedo and you're ready to go. That's fine. But I don't know why you come to the kitchen table in your Speedo. I said jumped in and it went to a pool analogy. Anyway, you can come to my house in a Speedo if you want, all right? But the point is, there's a process normally of helping people take next steps, and that's all we're having a conversation about. So specifically today, we're talking about the front door. What's it take to get people to the front door? What's it take to feel comfortable walking through that front door? And again, we're not just talking about these doors on this building, right? It could mean a lot of different things. We have city groups that meet in homes throughout the week. We have all kinds of different relational environments that can represent these gatherings. And so this is just one of many. So today's conversation is written by a guy named Mark. And this is important. I want to give you some context to our conversation. This guy was hanging out with a guy named Peter, and Peter was one of Jesus' 12 first followers. Like Peter was on a boat, Jesus called him to follow him, and Peter did it. And so Peter was also like wishy-washy, like he followed Jesus, then he unfollowed Jesus, then he like totally denied he ever knew Jesus, then he refollowed Jesus. And so Peter was like all over the place with his relationship. And Mark was hanging out with him and getting the story of Jesus' life firsthand from Peter. It's really important that when we have conversations around faith, we're not talking about a hopeful thing that might have happened, maybe, hopefully, wishful thinking, right? We're actually talking about faith in an eyewitness account, right? When you go to court and you give a testimony, right, about an instance, it's supposed to be validated and true. And so what we're looking at is the testimony of eyewitnesses of the real live Jesus who really died on a cross and who really showed up to people 3 days later from the grave, right? This is not hopeful thinking. This is Mark's getting the story firsthand from Peter, who 3 days after Jesus was murdered on a cross had breakfast with him. Okay, so Mark is like writing this stuff down. And you got to think, Peter's probably getting old at this point, and so he kind of like shoots his stories off like left and right. So when you read the book of Mark, it's not chronological. It's not like, hey, here's the beginning and here's the end of Jesus' story. Mark just kind of has a shotgun stories of, hey, this happened, and this happened, and this happened. So today, we're in Mark chapter 2, and we're looking at the actions of 4 guys who, here's what's unique. We don't know anything about them. We don't have names, occupations, anything, but 4 guys who have some radical, remarkable actions because of who they believe Jesus to be. So Mark chapter 2, verses 1 through 7 is where we're going to be. We'll start here. When Jesus returned to Capernaum several days later, he was out traveling, preaching, and he'd go around to different towns. The news spread quickly that he was back home. And soon the house where he was staying was so packed with visitors that there was no more room even outside the door. How many of you guys went anywhere for spring break? Anything cool? Few of us, 2 of you, 3 of you. Yeah, some stuff. So, you ever need a vacation from your vacation, right? Like you're absolutely exhausted. So Jesus gets back. He's been traveling. People hear that he's in town. He's starting to kind of collect some following at this point as the miracle worker, someone from God. And so then people crowd his house. And while he was preaching God's word to them, 4 men arrived carrying a paralyzed man on a mat. And so I just want you to imagine Jesus hanging out. All of a sudden, all these people show up, right? If that's me, right, I'm frustrated. My compassion level is probably going to be pretty low. But I want you to notice something, that instead of being frustrated, Jesus engages with those that are there. It says that while he was preaching God's word to them. And so rather than being frustrated that all these people are there, Jesus is filled with compassion over inconvenience. And so this is for you and me. Just as we start the conversation, it's really important that you and I see that Jesus responds to us with compassion regardless of what's going on. So no matter what you came in with, no matter what's going on in your life, no matter where you've been, no matter where you are right now, Jesus, his first response to you and I is compassion, which I think is remarkable because that would not be my response in this situation. And so I think seeing the character of Jesus here is important for us as we build a foundation. But also, I just want you to think, Jesus was not inconvenienced, but often I am. And so here's the deal. If you're a follower of Jesus in the room, this conversation is going to go one way for you. If you're not a follower of Jesus in the room, this conversation is going to be really helpful because it's going to give you insight into God's heart and desire for you. But when we're having this conversation, I find myself more times inconvenienced rather than filled with compassion. And my question for you and I is this: what if the inconveniences that you and I experience on a weekly basis, which happen often, what if those are really meant to be opportunities? I find that often there's an intersect of an inconvenience that turns into an opportunity. What if God is setting us up on a regular basis for something that would be out of our way? The neighbor that wants to talk to you in the front yard, the coworker that asks you to lunch, the person that asks you to lunch on campus, or you get invited to a kid's play date at a park, or you get invited to dinner by a friend, or to grab lunch or coffee. I was looking at, I got an update this morning on my iPhone. It said that I successfully logged 2.5 hours of screen time a day over the last week. I don't know if you guys get those reports. I'm like, whoa, 2.5 hours a day? And it was like, congratulations, that's down from last week. I'm like, oh, dang. Oh, wow. Okay, and I was thinking, I'm like, man, like, I don't know where my phone is, but these things, they carry an inconvenience factor to them, right? Like I can find myself inconvenienced when trying to live here rather than what's in front of me. And so I don't know what you find yourself inconvenienced by, but maybe the opportunities around us look something like that. Now, check this out. There's 4 guys that arrive carrying a paralyzed, I'm sorry, go back, Daniel. 4 guys that arrive carrying a paralyzed guy on a mat. Can I have this blanket real fast underneath you that you don't know is there? All right, so for all intents and purposes, this is my illustration for you and I. I want you to imagine a paralyzed guy on a mat. And when I imagine his mat, it looks like this. I don't know why. It's colorful and beautiful. All right, so, and let's just call our guy Matt. Is that fair? Is that okay? You can laugh at that. That was funny. All right. It's only kind of funny. All right, we're going to call our guy on a mat Matt for all intents and purposes. 4 guys showing up, and here's the deal. We don't know anything about these guys. They show up carrying this guy to Jesus. And I think this is really important. We don't know their occupation, their social status, their names, their family dynamics. We don't know what inconveniences they might have going on. And so it could have been, I just want you to think, 4 corners of a mat, could have been a CEO of a Fortune 500 company on one corner, and an owner of a strip club over here, and a stay-at-home mom over here, and a school teacher over here, right? Could have been just totally different walks of life people. We don't know anything about them. And one of the excuses that I hear often when it comes to engaging and making a difference in the lives of people around us is that people will say, man, I really want to get my life together before I help others. And I know what I mean by that. Like, we don't want to be hypocritical in the manner that we help and love and serve others. But here's the deal. Here's what's really cool is when it comes to genuinely helping others, you and I aren't really the people that help them anyway. Like, in a minute, we're going to see it's Jesus that helps this guy, right? Like, I don't change lives. I don't make a significant difference outside of myself. I don't have the power to save or change a life, but Jesus does. And so take the pressure off yourself and just imagine, man. Like, listen, if there is a qualification to helping other people, the bar is super low, right? I think there's a reason that there's no names in here. So here's my point. If I can be used by God to help people, you definitely can be used by God to help people, okay? Like, I'm pretty low on the bar. And so listen, if you're not a follower of Jesus in the room, the beauty of following Jesus is that it's simply an invitation to follow. And Jesus starts to work out the kinks along the way. He doesn't say, hey, behave and fall into this category of living, and then you can follow me. He simply invites people to follow him because he knows that the more that we spend time with him and follow him, the more he's going to change us internally, which will eventually get to the external things. And so it's a really, really beautiful idea. Now, I want you to think about something. Our guy Matt here. I want you to imagine, everybody heard, small town, so everybody's running to Jesus' house, and they're probably passing Matt on the way, right? Like, hey, Matt, Jesus is in town. You should come and check him out. It's going to be awesome. Or, hey, Matt, did you hear? Like, Jesus is here. He maybe could help you. And probably, I wonder how many people walked around and over Matt to get to Jesus. And I think this is one of the things that the church has historically done a terrible job of, is we're so busy being or playing church that we forget to be the church. Are you with me? And it's not, this is not pointing fingers, because I think we're all guilty of it at some point, but it's simply taking a step back and saying, whoa, like, how many people like crossed Matt's path and even said, like, hey man, like, maybe this would help you. Here's the deal. If these 4 guys wouldn't have stopped and picked up a corner and carried him, Matt would have never got to Jesus on his own. I mean, we know that for a fact. And I wonder for you and I, listen, friends, if you're a follower of Jesus in the room, and there are people that God has put in our lives that might not ever get to Jesus on their own. They're not ever going to accidentally walk through the front doors of a church. Very rarely does that happen, almost always. Right? God uses someone else to help us start a relationship with Jesus. I met Jesus at 15 because I was chasing a girl. Right? God will use whatever he wants. I was chasing a girlfriend, couldn't see her anywhere else. Ended up going to church with her because her dad wouldn't let me see her anywhere else, and I met Jesus there. And then she broke up with me. That was messed up, right? But I'm grateful. I'd rather I traded up, that's for sure. All right. So again, this guy would have never made it to Jesus on his own. Here's the first point: we've got to meet people where they are. We've got to meet people where they are. If we don't meet people where they are, they might not ever get to Jesus on their own. Are you guys with me on this? This is really important. This is at the center of our mission, to help people find their way to God from where they are. Right? We are the church. We exist for the world. We're not going to wait for them to come to us. We're going to live openly and honestly and consistently with the love of God working in and through us. So here's the second part. Check this out. Verse 4. Here's what happened: is they couldn't bring this guy to Jesus. They couldn't bring Matt to Jesus because of the crowd. And so they dug a hole through the roof above his head. That's boss, right? That is awesome. Then they lowered him down on his mat right down in front of Jesus. This is crazy. This is crazy. So they couldn't bring him to Jesus because of the crowd. I want to just back up for just a second. Let me ask you, this question. What are your crowds? I think most people would have got there. There's a line, and we've been, oh man, I'm sorry, Matt. Well, this is a pretty good effort, right? He's probably not a light dude. They carried him all the way there. Man, we really tried, and we just can't get to Jesus, and they would have given up. That's a pretty admirable effort. But these guys are crazy, and they're just that crazy that they do something above and beyond. And so what are your crowds? I hear a lot of people say, man, I invited my friends to church. They just don't want to come, or they said they're not religious, and we have these immediate excuses of why we'll stop the process, or I'm just too busy, or man, for me, honestly, I'm worried what they're going to think, right? If I take another step, I'm worried what they're going to think about me, or my life is a mess, and so I don't feel like I have the right to do that. So, for example, this week, I had a conversation with a buddy over coffee, and we're having this conversation about he had some religious experiences growing up with the Catholic Church, and the more we talk about it, it becomes apparent that it was pretty far from what Jesus talked about when it comes to a relationship with God. And so I got fired up, excited, right? Because this is right in my wheelhouse. I had seen boring church and religion. I didn't want that. Didn't offer any hope for me. But when I met Jesus, he changed my life. And so my understanding of a relationship with God and what Jesus came to bring, and then what, unfortunately, the Western church continues to mistake at times, I get super excited. And so all of a sudden, I start sharing. I'm like, oh, man, this is a relationship. And as I share and I'm passionate, it's going pretty well. And then kind of towards the end, I go from super excited to super worried. Because immediately I'm like, oh, no. Was I too excited? Right? And I start doing all the oh man, I hope I didn't just ruin this relationship, or I didn't just, push it too far. I got too excited about Jesus, made it super weird. And he didn't give off any of those signs, right? Just what my mind does. Oh no. And it's a crowd for me to the point that it makes me nervous then to re-engage, right? Oh man, did I burn that bridge? What's going to happen? And I kind of ran into this crowd. Does that make sense to you? And so what are your crowds? I want to encourage you to push past the crowds. These guys do something crazy. They dug a hole through the roof. Now listen, that's really easy on paper, but how'd they get that guy up there, right? They got Matt, and they're like, all right, what now? How do we get him? And he can't go through the window. There's no back door. What do we do? How about the roof? Yeah. And so Matt doesn't have any say, right? He can't. We don't even know if he can talk. He's hanging out. He's there, and I can just see the guys. One's up on the roof. Two guys are down here going, all right, Matt, hold on. 1, 2, and then up. Let's try again. Sorry, man. Right, I don't know what it took to get Matt on the roof, but I'm sure it wasn't easy, right? He's not helping in any way, so they drag him up on the roof somehow, which is unbelievable to start with. But then they dig a hole through the roof. Now, granted, it's not roofs like we have. They're not having to take off shingles and stuff, but it's still a roof. And so can you imagine everybody's hanging out inside in the living room, all of a sudden, all this stuff's just to fall in the living room, all the straw and the dirt and everything that's holding the roof together. And then, there's a couple guys looking over hey, super weird. And what did they use to dig through the roof? Like, right, someone's just carrying a pickaxe, right? Like with them, like, hey, I got this on me, right? Well, this is crazy. They went above and beyond to get their friends to Jesus, or rather to get Matt to Jesus. And so, hey, babe, will you engage that family? Thank you. So, thank you, Michelle, as well. That's one downside to hanging out in a lobby, is this is where people walk in. Okay? So again, as we're having this conversation, it would have taken a lot. This is crazy. So in our conversation, we're saying, hey, let's do anything short of sin to get people to Jesus, whatever it takes, something crazy. And this is that front door conversation. So you might have some friends that are like, man, I am never going to a church. That's okay, right? Just bust down that front door, kick a hole in the wall, do whatever you got to take. Do what's going to work for them to get them to Jesus. And so, again, I don't know about you when it comes to digging through a roof, but I bet they were pumped. Like, I don't know if you like destroying stuff, but that's definitely something I enjoy doing, like just wailing on this roof. And so, again, you might ask the question, oh, great, man, I want to meet people where they are, and I'm willing to do whatever it takes. How do I do that? This is point number 2, is doing whatever it takes. And it might mean some simple things like, man, inviting your neighbors over for dinner. That might be a good place to start. Inviting some friends over for dinner, right? Or like one time I like mowed my neighbor's yard, right? Like I didn't even ask him. I just started doing it. I'm like, he looked out the window. Super weird. I don't know if I would do that again. Shovel their driveway, rake their leaves. Like you start working on relational barriers, right? It might mean that you go to lunch with a coworker, or you sign up and start coaching your kids' soccer league to start meeting people, or you start building more friendships in your neighborhood over time, right? Danielle and I will go to the same park over and over again to see the same parents with the same kids and build a relationship. Most of them have no idea I go to church. Right? Because of consistent transparency, I'm not trying to come across as agenda. I'm trying to love them. And when God opens a door, then I can walk through it. Are you with me? So what is it that's crazy for you? Bob Goff said it this way. He said, just start somewhere. Draw a circle around you and start loving the people in it. That's a good place to start. Just draw a circle around you and start loving the people in it. Here's my concern. These guys were willing to do whatever it takes. Matt wouldn't have made it on his own. They went the extra mile. But the reason we have waited so long to start gathering like this is because if we're so busy playing weekend church, if we're so busy gathering and just working on a service that we don't have time to love our neighbors, then I think we're failing as a church, because we are the church and we're called to the world around us. That's where the name City Church came from. Jesus said that you're a city on a hill and this light that can't be hidden. He said it's by your good works that people are going to glorify God. It's not by the services that you hold or the buildings that you meet in or how good of a speaker one guy is or how good the band is. He said it's by the way that you love. The world around you is going to know that the Jesus you follow is real. And so that's our heart. Here's the last part, verse 5. Check this out. I don't know how they lowered Matt down, hopefully slowly, right? But probably not. They probably didn't have a nice rig, and so they're like lowering Matt down. And Jesus, seeing their faith, said to the paralyzed man, "My child, your sins are forgiven." And some of the teachers of religious law who were sitting there thought to themselves, what is he saying? This is blasphemy. Only God can forgive sins. Here's the deal. Jesus was the only one that could help Matt. I'm sure at this point he's already tried multiple things in his life to be helped with whatever he had, his paralysis or whatever it might have been. Jesus was the only one that could help him. And I hear people say with good intentions, man, I invited my friends to church and they just won't come. And they kind of let that be the place that they stop. But man, my invitation for you and I is, so what? Like, we are the church. We're called to the world. So what if they won't come here? Someone can meet Jesus at my kitchen table just as easily as they can meet Jesus in this room on a Sunday. Right? We are the church. We're called to the world. And here's the deal. Listen, Matt doesn't need church. Matt doesn't need behavior modification. He doesn't need religion. He doesn't need a list of self-help things to do. You know what Matt needs? He needs Jesus. That's it. Isn't that beautiful? Like I think the church gets stuck and we think, oh no, it's a list of do's and don'ts. And Jesus, no, it's not. You can't do enough do's and don'ts in order to get here anyway. And so that's why Jesus is going to give his life on the cross. And this is a beautiful thing. Jesus seeing their faith. Whose faith? The 4 guys carrying Matt. This is really interesting. It's Matt's faith that saved him, right? I can't believe in Jesus for anybody. And God doesn't impose a relationship on anybody, right? Love is got to be mutual, right? God's not going to impose his love on anyone else. That's called abuse, right? He doesn't do that. And so it's an invitation into a relationship. And Jesus, seeing their faith, then he responds to Matt. It's Matt's faith that saved him, but it's his friend's faith that got him there. Over the next 21 days, we're fasting and praying and trusting God for opportunities to be one of these 4 guys on a corner. And our friends, they don't need church. They don't need religion. They don't need behavior modification. They simply need Jesus. And however we can get them to Jesus, that's what we're going to do. So here's the last point is, man, we've got to bring them to Jesus. That's it. That's what matters. He's the one that changes lives. You and I, we don't carry that capacity. And so real quick, let me borrow 4 people as we close out. I need, let's see, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Daniel, come here. You're sitting right there. All right, you guys grab a corner. Everybody grab a corner. I just want to illustrate this last point for you. Hold on, don't pick it up. Hold on, because you're going to carry me. All right. All right, let's go. Let's do this. Okay, we didn't rehearse this. Yeah. All right, now carry me home. I'm just kidding. All right, so you guys kind of move around just a little bit, right? I just want you guys to have the picture of Matt. Okay, stop for a second. Daniel, let go of your corner. Okay, all right, yeah. Thank you. Right, now, come on, guys, take me home. What are you doing? Right, so keep going, and let's see. Ashley, you didn't drop your corner. All right, Maddie, carry the load. Come on. Let's do it. All right. So, all right, you guys, give him a hand. Way to go. I want you guys to see that all of us have a corner, right? And if any of us fail to bring our responsibility to the table, fail to help get our mats to Jesus, it only gets that much harder. There are people in your life that I will never have influence with, that maybe I can't carry a corner with. And I just wonder, who has God put in your life that maybe you get to be on a corner and just be a part of it? I just want you to recognize that we all have a responsibility when it comes to loving others. And here's the deal. Here's the motivation. If you're not a follower of Jesus in the room, you're like, okay, I recognize the passion, but this is kind of weird. And here's the deal. Listen, if we're followers of Jesus in the room, we were invited into a relationship with God. And as a result, we became a part of God's family. And being a part of God's family, we start to love what God loves. And you know what God loves? He loves people. He loves Matts. He loves every single one of my neighbors in the Holiday neighborhood. He loves every student on the CU campus. He loves every person on every block of our city and the world. And he's called us to a unique place and a unique time to let people know, man, you might have been invited to religion, but Jesus is inviting you into a relationship. And they're not the same thing. So you and I have the opportunity, not out of obligation, but out of love, to carry the same love that God has to those around us. That's why we're so passionate about it. And so a couple of things on your Connect card for you and I, just to think about, okay? You say, great, this is awesome. I want to help people find their way to God from where they are. I want to be a part of making a difference in the lives around me. What do I do? Well, make a plan. Good intentions are never going to get you anywhere. They just don't. Life happens and there are a lot of inconveniences. So number one, man, just think one thing. Now here's the cool thing. Even if you're not a follower of Jesus this week, you can make a difference in someone's life this week. So the one thing is what can you do between Monday and next Sunday? What one relationship, what one lunch conversation, one coffee, what's one thing you can do to engage in a relationship this week? And honestly, write it down, put a note, send a text message, do what you got to do, because again, good intentions don't work. So get it on the calendar. I'm going to have my neighbors over this week. Maybe you're in here and you need to give your life to Jesus today. Maybe for the first time, you realize that you don't need religion, but you do need Jesus. And I want you to know that invitation is completely open. We talk about faith, and faith is not an ethereal concept of hopefulness that something might happen. Faith is in the person and the work of Jesus, that he is who he said he was and that he could do what he said he was going to do. You have faith in the chair you're sitting in right now that is going to hold you up. We have the capacity to put our faith in Jesus, that he can give us a relationship with God. When Jesus gave his life on the cross, he was buried after he died, and then he rose again. He died in our place for our sin and rose again like none of us can, so that we can have a relationship with God like you and I can't earn or maintain. And simply by faith, trusting that Jesus is enough. I am not, and I'm invited in that relationship with God. And it's like a gift. You simply receive it. You don't earn it. You don't maintain it. You simply receive it because it's already been purchased. It's already been bought. You have the 3 VIP stickers sitting around you, or hopefully you already grabbed one. That's another next step, right? 3 people over the next 3 weeks that you already, if you just draw a circle around you, who's in it? Who are those 3 people that you can start inviting, engaging? And you know what? They might not be ready to come to church. That's okay. God still put them in your life to start engaging and loving. And if you get the opportunity, you can invite them to Easter. And there's multiple things you can do. You can sign up for Growth Track, take next steps so you can be on the team and help us continue to build family and make a difference in our city. And lastly, you can join a city group. It's all on your Connect card. And your city groups, man, so here's the deal. This is awkward and hard sometimes because when it comes to loving people, right, if you're like me, you feel that pressure of like not wanting to get weird or, lose a relationship over this. But man, the love is so motivating that you want to continue to bring it to the table for them. And so maybe you need to be in a group of people around you that meets for 2 hours in a home on a weeknight, shares a meal, and can help you through the process and can pray for you and pray for your friends and pray for those you're engaging and hold you accountable. That's the beauty of groups, is when we live life together, we have other people helping and strengthening us when it comes to living this life out. So I'm going to pray for us, and then we're going to close our time together. Will you bow your heads with me? As you bow your heads and close your eyes, this is just a moment of privacy for you and I to respond to what God might be doing in our hearts. And so it's not super spiritual time. It's not meant to be weird. It's just so you don't have to worry about anybody else in the room looking around. And so maybe you're sitting there and God's already put some people on your heart. You got 1, 2, or 3 people that you're like, yeah, man, I can engage them. I can love them. I can invite them to City Church. I can meet them where they are. No one else is looking around, but if you have some people on your heart and mind, would you raise your hands with me so I can pray for you? Yeah, man. God, I'm so grateful for those that are raising their hands, that have some people on their hearts and minds that you have allowed them to engage. And I pray this week you would give them opportunities to engage. With our heads bowed and eyes closed still, just a moment. Maybe you're here and you say, you know what, Drake, I have never put my faith in Jesus. I've never trusted him and asked him to save me and start that relationship. But to be honest, it's clear to me. I don't need religion, but I do indeed need and want to have a relationship with Jesus. No one else is looking around, but I want you to know in the privacy of your own heart and mind right now, you can pray and you can ask Jesus to save you and set you free. In your own heart and mind, you can say, Jesus, I believe in you. I believe you died for me. I believe you rose again. And I believe you can give me a relationship with God that I can't earn. No one else is looking around, but if that's you, man, I want you to have confidence today that if you pray that in your own heart and mind, you can have a relationship with Jesus starting right now. If you made that decision, man, it would be an honor for you to let us know on your Connect card so we can help you take some next steps and follow up with you. God, I'm so grateful for the team that you're building, those that aren't here, those that are in the room, the DNA and the culture of being a church in the city and for the city. And man, I pray to God that you would use us to create something truly remarkable. It's in Jesus' name. Amen.